God 90 Radio on Demand. My name is Jerry Mitchell, your host for Give God 90, and it is an honor and a privilege to have you spend just a little bit of your most valuable asset with me. And that's not your money, that is your time. When you spend your time with me, I try very hard to make it worth your while to do so. We have an ever-growing number of listeners, and I appreciate all of you. But for the benefit of the new listeners, if you haven't done so, you can download the Give God 90 app. It is free. Somebody else has paid for it, so you don't have to. And what it does is it gives you a lot more control on your mobile devices. It is for your Apple or Android device. You have all kinds of control. You can download these apps, listen to them later, take them with you, plug them into your cars, search through the archives, all that kind of thing, right on that little tiny thing you hold in your hand, and most people have with them all the time these days. I do know we reach some folks in other countries in various ways, and I appreciate each and every one of you folks spending some time with us as well. I'm not exactly sure how you all listen in other countries, but I appreciate each and every one of you. I get messages from folks all over the world on different social programs, and it really is humbling to know there are people out there who listen to this and who are touched by it and who are really trying to live the way they are designed to live by their Creator. That it just makes more. It warms my heart. It really does. Today, though, as you know, as the nations fall is what I'm going to title this, and it's not just one nation. I don't want you to think this is going to be political, okay? It's not a political survey. It's because this isn't dealing with just the United States. This is dealing directly out of the Bible with every nation. Now, for my Jewish listeners, yes, the information I'm going to be sharing today does come from one of Paul's letters, but really, if you think about this letter, just trust me here and give it a listen, okay? Because I think what you're going to see is something fascinating, especially as we look around the world today. I really wanted to do something a little more upbeat for today, but this conversation's come up about 4 times this week. So when that happens, it's a sign to me that people are interested in something like this. So I should probably address it. And let's start, and I'm going to be reading in Romans. And as I go through this, it's not really my commentary on it. I'm going to attempt to break down a little bit of what Paul's saying here. Because this is actually, it's been called a couple of things, but you'll see what I mean here. If we start in Romans chapter 1 in verse 18, and I'm reading from the Tree of Life version today, because, honestly, this is probably the easiest one to understand. Paul writes, beginning in verse 18 of Romans chapter 1, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men. In unrighteousness they suppress the truth, because what can be known about God is plain to them, for God has shown it to them." Now, Paul, in just a couple of sentences right there, really lays down the gauntlet, doesn't he? He says that God will pour out his wrath on all ungodliness and all unrighteousness. Everybody who fails to follow his instructions, in other words. The sentence here, in unrighteousness they suppress the truth. Think about that for a second. If you are trying to keep the word of your Creator from being spread, you're suppressing truth, aren't you? That's being done more and more and more today, all the time. verse 19, because what can be known about God is plain to them, for God has shown it to them. Let's continue. His invisible attributes, the things you cannot see that he does, okay, his eternal power and his divine nature have been clearly seen ever since the creation of the world, being understood through the things that have been made. He's actually picking that up from Job, where Job says, if you don't think there is a God, just look around. Ask the birds of the air. Ask the fish of the sea. Ask the dirt. It will tell you. Basically, and I've said this before, Job is saying, if you don't think that God exists, you're dumber than the dirt. Okay? That's basically what he's saying out there. Paul continues now. So people are without an excuse. For even though they knew God, they did not glorify him as God. Think about that. Even though they recognize who he is, they know what he's done, they don't glorify him. They don't thank him. Instead, the people's thinking became futile, and their senseless hearts were made dark. He is really laying it out here. Paul could not preach in most Christian churches today. He would be kicked out of most Christian churches today if he delivered this message that he wrote to the people living in Rome. Verse 22, claiming to be wise, they became fools. They exchanged the glory of the immortal God for an image in the form of a mortal man, and birds, and four-footed beasts, and creeping things. He's talking not just about idol worship here, but he's talking about yourself, worshiping self as well. Today, we hold a lot of people, we set them up on pedestals, and it doesn't matter whether they're politicians, it doesn't matter whether they're in the entertainment industry, in the sports industry, it doesn't matter who these people are. We kind of put them up on these pedestals, and we say, aren't you wonderful? And we say it to them so much that they begin to think, yes, I am wonderful, aren't I? Well, guess what? Let's keep reading and see what Paul has to say about this today. Therefore, because of everything that I've just gone over, Paul says, therefore God gave them over to their evil desires of their hearts, to impurity, to dishonor their bodies with one another. Does that sound like anything going on today? Does that sound like anything going on in this world today? Well, of course it does. They traded the truth of God for a lie and worshipped and served the creation rather than the Creator. Let me say that again, because I've said this before, and it's in my second book, I believe. It's in God's Universe, God's Rules. They traded the truth of God for a lie and worshipped and served the creation rather than the Creator. Now, that's tough. That's tough language that Paul's using here. What he's saying is, you're not worshiping God, you're worshiping the created, rather than the one who created everything, who is blessed forever. For this reason, God gave them up to their shameful passions. Even their women exchanged natural relations for what is against nature. Think about what's going on in the world today, people. It's happening. Not just in the United States, not just in Canada, not just in Europe, European nations, around the world. Around the world. Likewise, men abandoned natural relations with women and were burning with passion towards one another. This is New Testament Christianity for you folks out there who want to just claim New Testament Christianity, okay? This, Paul says, isn't right. And it leads to the fall of the nations. Verse 28, and just as they did not see fit to recognize God, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do what was not fitting. Ladies and gentlemen, you can barely think of a place where God is welcome today. We have removed God from our schools, from our public buildings. We have tried to remove God from our money. We have tried to remove God from everything, including our churches and our hearts. And Paul said, just as they did not see fit to recognize God, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do what was fitting. Think about that statement. That is in Romans chapter 1, verse 28. You take God out, and He looks at you and says, if I'm not welcome there, you do whatever you want to do. But don't come begging to me for help. They became filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, and evil. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. What's happening in public places around the world today? What's happening in public places around the world today? We see unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They're gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil. They're coming up with ways to do evil. They're foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's righteous decree of those who practice such things deserve death. Paul could not preach this message in most modern Christian churches today. What we see here is not just, and I'm not talking just about the United States, I am talking about every nation around the globe. Wherever people form a country, wherever people form a nation, that's what I am speaking of. Now, think about this. Paul's using the word nations here. And I'm sorry, Paul's not using the word nations here. Paul's using the word people here. He's not being specific to any part of the world. He's saying this happens wherever you will be. He recognizes the fact that it doesn't matter when or where, there will be people who deny, reject, scoff. There will be people who flat out refuse their Creator. He's looking at this, and 2,000 years ago, he's writing from a historical standpoint. Okay? Today, 2,000 years past Paul, we see it being thrown in the faces of believers. And it doesn't matter really whether you are Christian, whether you're Jewish. It doesn't matter really what religion you are, whether Buddhist, Hindu. It doesn't matter what religion you are. If you believe in the morality of a higher being, Paul says your morality is going to be challenged. Paul says everything that you hold dear is going to be challenged. And that's what we see around the world today, isn't it? There's good news, though. There's good news. Once he gets done talking about all of these things, and Paul goes on for a long time talking about how nobody is worthy, let's say. he continues and he says, look, God has revealed something to you. He gives you his instructions. He tells you you can come back and follow those instructions and everything's going to be fine. You have the opportunity to submit to the covenant he made, which is his instructions. You have the opportunity to come back and renew your bond with your Creator and begin doing the things he's asking you to do. That's the good news of it. That's the good news of what we see in Paul's letter here. And Paul says that even Abraham was set apart. Not because of the things he did. The things that Abraham did just simply displayed the faith that Abraham had in his Creator. If you say, I have faith in God, well, then you have a choice. You can either do the things that God asks you to do and live the life that God asks you to live, or you can reject it. If you are displaying rejection, but saying, I claim God, what does that lead people to see? They look at you and say, well, you can't be serious. You can't do both. You can't rob and murder and cheat and claim to love your Creator, because your Creator tells you not to do those things. You can do all the good you want to do in the world, but you just can't do any of the bad, right? But that's what we concentrate on. We concentrate on the bad stuff, a very short list of bad stuff, because there's no list of the things we can do. Describe good. Well, if you don't have, if all you have to say is, well, it's not bad, that's not a description. But you are free to help the people around you with the skills that the Almighty has knitted into you. All of that is acceptable. You just treat people and do for people what you would have someone else do for you. That's not difficult, is it? If it were difficult to do that, would people do good or do bad? There are people who want to make it difficult and they do bad. There are people who want to be evil. For some reason, they have chosen to follow the unholy spirits, and they walk down this path of unrighteousness and evil. And without getting into anything specific, they do these things long enough, and then it becomes part of their life, doesn't it? It becomes part of their life. The good news is we have an opportunity. We have the opportunity not to do those things. We have an opportunity to do things that are absolutely perfect in our eyes and in the eyes of the Almighty. And all you have to do is live the life that the Almighty designed you to live. And I can tell you, He does not design anybody to live contrary to His instructions. Let me say that again. God does not design anyone to live for the specific purpose of violating His instructions. But He does design us to live, and live an abundant life, let's put it that way. I was going to say abundantly, but that's not really proper. He designs us to receive an abundance of His blessings, and all we have to do is what He asks. All we have to do is avoid a very short list of negatives and open ourselves up to an endless possibility of helping others. It's that simple. It's that simple. I know people that do this, and it's easy. I try. Sometimes I fall short. And if you ask the folks that I'm talking about, they would say, yeah, I try and I fall short too. And that's part of it. We know our shortcomings. We recognize our own failings, and it's okay. Because we're trying. We're doing the best we can, not doing the least we can. You put forth the most effort. You don't stop halfway through. You see what I'm saying, I hope? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know. I hate to stop this short, but I really need to today, because I don't like delivering completely negative things, okay? So I'm going to stop talking about the negative things, and let's talk about some positive things for just a moment. There's some really good things happening in the world. Really, really good things happening in the world. More and more and more people are recognizing that some of the places they are not where they need to be. They're coming out of those places and they're finding small fellowships all over the world. I get messages from various places where technically that I can't talk about, okay? It's because if the folks found out that they were doing what they're doing in those parts of the world, they would put an end to it. So, I can't really say where these things are, but it's happening. It's happening all over the world. People are recognizing the fact that they have got to come back, and they meet in smaller groups. They're not looking for these big mega churches anymore. They're not looking to be entertained by worship band concerts. They're looking to be in the presence of the Almighty. They're looking to be in these fellowships where they understand the Spirit of the Almighty wants to be. They're coming into these places and they're meeting, they're gathering, they're having Bible study and prayer time, they're doing all of these things. And why is that happening? Because we are told also that will happen, where people will join together. God has promised to be there. Now, our Jewish friends have known about this for a very long time, right? They've known about this, and they do their thing. They go by their daily lives living this out most of the time. Why aren't more Christians actually living the way they're designed to live? It's a growing number. It's a growing number. Wish it would grow faster, but it is a growing number. That's the good news that we need to get out and share. We, the folks, I should say, who have recognized that following God's instructions bring blessing, are getting noticed. They're getting attention. People are seeing what's happening. And when they look at them, they're curious. Why do you all of a sudden, have a change of heart? Why do you? It's not really a change of heart, but a change of attitude, because you're no longer sitting in that same place in your comfort zone. You've gotten out of that comfort zone. You haven't taken your eyes off of the Almighty, but what you have done is you've moved over a little bit to where you can see another different part of who God is and what God is. You've moved over a little bit because He's asked you to move over. Look at me from this angle. Now move a little bit more. It's what He did with Abraham, right? He said, Abraham, you've got to come out of where you are, go where I show you, and you'll see a different part of me. And Abraham went. And because he was faithful, what did Abraham receive? He did the same thing, with many, many people. Jonah put up a fight, remember? Jonah didn't want to go. But once Jonah finished, he was like, oh, okay. You got what you wanted, didn't you, God? I still don't like those people, but you got what you wanted. And Jonah went on with his life after that. We don't hear much about him. The people who are moving out of their comfort zones, but not moving away from God, are finding out that they can sometimes get closer. They're finding out that it's okay as long I don't have to sit here in my comfort zone and only see, a little piece of the pie. We were talking yesterday with some folks, and I commented, I said, there's a lot of people that want to keep Jesus, either in the manger or on the cross. They don't want anything to do with anything in between or anything after. There are people who want to keep Moses on Mount Sinai. They don't want to have anything to do with him before or after. They like him right there on Mount Sinai. They like him in front of the burning bush, or they like him getting the Ten Commandments. Anything else they don't like. There are people in this world who think God will fit in a box, and they realize that, or they fail to realize that there's no box big enough to put God in. It's just when you think you got him figured out, something else comes up, and he will show you a different aspect of who he is and what he can do. That's the good news. As long as you keep focused on the Creator, you can come out of your comfort zone, and you can do things, and everything that you do will benefit not only you, but the people around you. And that's what it's all about. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope the good news has been a blessing to you. The bad news, we need to learn from. We can have influence over the bad stuff. All we have to do is say, not in my house, not in my life, not me. You have that choice. Make it a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the time you spent with me today. I hope it's been a blessing. Thank you so very much. Until next time, have a blessed week.